we are at night, talking about the morning. This is Julie Bogart from BraveWriter. Tonight's topic is your morning routine, creating a sane one. I hope you're ready to join me and talk all about it. I'm Julie Bogart from BraveWriter, and I'm going to switch this camera around so you can see me. Ready? Here we go. Well, hi everybody. Got a little fire going in the background there. My little tree. Can you see me okay? Can't get it any lower, so this is, here, we'll try this. We'll tip it a little like that so you can see the background. Hi, welcome, Allie and Audria. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Yvonne, and from Arizona. Yes, it's so cozy tonight. I had to sit in my other room because we are using my computer a little bit. Hello, Mary. Hi, Robin and Jenny and Vicky and Deb. Look at you all flying in here. Hey, Tanya, welcome. Thank you for tuning in from DC, and Libby for sharing in Seattle, Southern California and North Carolina. Hi, Hope. Hi, Becky from Indy. Thanks, Tanya, for sharing. If you want to share with your friends, you know what to do. Swipe to the right, swipe up, hit the share button. Okay, thanks. If you're new, can you put new in the little comment section if you're new to my Periscope? Hey, Heather and Heidi and Marie-Charlene. Oh, it's great to see you. Tip City, Ohio. Hey, Sheila, I remember you. Hi, Heather. Oh, welcome, newbie. I'm so glad you're here. Two of you, one from Arizona. You invited all your friends. Thank you. Old counts too. I love my old viewers. Hey, Carolyn. Hello. Hey, Kelly. Welcome. You've been following for a week. Great, Libby. Thank you so much for being here. If you're new, you get to tap the screen and give hearts. And if you're old, you get to also. Hey, Hannah from the Alliance. Hannah is talking. Oh, Vikas from the Bay Area, and Kate and Jen. Hannah is talking about my coaching program for homeschool parents. And you can find more out about it at coachjuliebogart.com. So who am I? I'm Julie Bogart. And I started a company called BraveWriter in January of 2000. And my goal was to help homeschooling parents, hey Stephanie, learn how to be better home educators, especially in the area of writing and language arts. And as that has evolved over the last 16 years, I've also had the opportunity to provide coaching and help with the essentials of homeschool. I have 5 adult kids, ages 19 to 28. So they're all out of the house doing their own things, living all over the world. And I homeschooled them for 17 years. We also used a little public high school in there for the older kids. And today they are either in college or graduate school or living in a foreign country. That's what my kids are all doing. So I'm excited to be here because this topic, morning routine, is one of my favorites. I loved how we spent our mornings in homeschool. And so what I want to do today, I have 5 tips for sanity in the morning. Thank you. Thank you for commenting on the background. You know, I plan it. I spend time. I'm like moving things around, trying to make sure that you don't get bored just looking at me talking with a wall behind me. So thanks for noticing. That makes me feel good. But what I am going to talk about tonight is not just how to structure your morning or what the 5 things are that you can include before noon when your kids are starving for lunch. I want to start the way I start many of my scopes. I want to talk about the educational philosophy and underpinning. I can see what you're saying, Mama Wardo. Thank you for tuning in. I want you to think about the underpinnings of what it is that we're trying to achieve with a morning routine. Not just give you a list of things to do and then you feel bad because you didn't do them or they don't match what Julie said to do. Okay, that's not the aim. Today, I want to talk to you about home education itself and how a morning routine may or may not help you. It certainly helped me, but we varied it multiple times over the course of those 17 years. It wasn't a schedule. It wasn't a system. Welcome, Patty, to our your first live scope. I know you. I'm so glad you're here. That's fun. And I will say hi, and I'll interrupt myself, and I'll answer questions as they pop up. I'm going to do the best I can to stay on topic. If I start down a path and I forget where I am, put it in the comments. It's hard in this venue to answer questions, validate your arrival, and stay on task, but I'm going to try my hardest. And I see we have a ton of you with me today. Thank you for all of the hearts and for sharing with your friends and coming in. So some people are already commenting on their morning routines, which is great. That's what I was going to ask next. Do you have a morning routine? Is it working for you? Do you like knowing what's going to happen in the morning? Or are you more the kind of person who wakes up and just wants to let the day greet her and then do whatever hits your fancy? So if you wouldn't mind in the comments saying, yes, I have a routine, no, I don't, or I don't want one, or I do want one. Okay, no, but we need one. Not worked by at all. Still trying to work it out. I don't. No, and it's not. I would rather have a routine. New homeschooler here. Our mornings are a mess. Yes, love the morning routine. Can't seem to stick to one. Need one. Kind of stuck. Nope. Okay, look at that. All right, new baby always makes a morning routine challenging. You're busy nursing all the time. Struggling, want one. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute, because if you're noticing, we all want one. Not everyone has one. And there's a feeling of obligation a little bit around it, right? Oh, someone says she has a morning routine, but her kids get up at different times. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. There is a different feeling around a morning routine when you have small children versus when you have junior high and high school kids, particularly gamers who stay up all night and then sleep in until 2 in the afternoon. Like some of you have kids like that. I certainly did. So that's what I mean. I'm going to share with you some ideas. You can send hearts from the iPad same way. You tap the screen. If it's not working, then I'm out of suggestions. Some of you are going to assume that there is a system that you can plug and play and it will work for all ages, for all time. So let's start by dispelling a myth. No practice that you adopt in homeschool works for all ages, for all time. You are going to see changes, flexibility. There will be moments where the routine is stifling that used to give you life. And I want you to be confident in paying attention to the affective level of what you're doing. If it doesn't feel good, then something needs to change. And when I say feel good, I'm not talking about feeling good like giddy happy. I mean satisfying. I mean supports the well-being of the family, leads you to a sense of confidence and priority and competence. And of course, there are going to be mornings where the routine gets blasted sky high by the flu or a colicky baby or the fact that you just didn't like the read aloud. I remember we read Moccasin Trail and my kids didn't like the book. You know what happened? We got about 4 to 6 chapters in and the whole morning routine went to heck because no one wanted to read that book and we could not admit it. So you know what happened? Kids dragged their feet. They didn't snuggle in. They weren't playing quietly because no one wanted to hear the book. But that didn't mean the routine was a problem. It meant the book was a problem. And we had to have the courage to abandon the book part way. So before we get started, I wanted to lay that groundwork that the morning routine is not your master. It is your servant. And you get to decide what works for your season and stage. Someone said coffee's a must. In my house, tea is a must. I can't get up without it. So let's first talk about the word schedule versus routine. What if every book is like that unless a picture book? Oh, we'll talk about books. So when I get to number 3 and we're talking about books, remind me of your question. So the first question I want to ask is, do you know if there's a difference between schedule and routine? Who has heard me talk about schedule versus routine before? I've mentioned it on Scopes. It's in a few of my products. If you haven't heard of the difference between schedule and routine, can you just put a little thumbs up or a number 1? Because I want to make sure that I'm sharing information people don't know. Okay, a lot of you have heard it. Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to give you like the thumbnail, and then if you still have questions, oh, here come some of the people who don't know. Okay. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to explain the difference, and if I haven't given you enough information, feel free to ask a follow-up question. So for many of us, the idea of a routine and schedule might seem interchangeable. A schedule is, I know what I'm doing right at this moment, and I am going to plan it in a predictable pattern. So perhaps we have a schedule for things like piano lessons or soccer practice. We always know soccer practice is on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. We know piano lessons are on Thursday mornings at 11 in the morning. And that goes on the calendar with a little alert reminder so you never forget it, right? That's the idea of schedule. When you're in school, you have a schedule. Period 1 meets at this time in this classroom. Second period meets at this time in this classroom. Tuesdays and Thursdays are a different schedule, and you learn how to adapt to these programmatic, tied to calendars, tied to time slots, experience of schedule. Now here's what a routine is. A routine is something that you do on a predictable basis, but you don't necessarily have it slotted into a specific time. For example, you brush your teeth on a routine. I brush my teeth in the morning after breakfast and right before I go to bed, pretty much every day. But I never think about what time it is. Like I don't think to myself, it's 9:30 p.m., I better go upstairs and brush my teeth. If I stay up till 10, I brush my teeth at 10. If I go to bed early at 8, I brush my teeth at 8. If I stay up till 2 in the morning, I brush my teeth at 2. Never once do I feel badly about that. I don't think, I violated the schedule. The toothbrushing does not count. Are you feeling me? Do you kind of see where I'm going? I use the analogy of meal planning sometimes to explain schedule versus routine. So here's what eating on a schedule might look like. Let's say it's the weekend and you get out all of your cookbooks and you make a whole list of all the meals you will make for the coming week. So you go to the store on Sunday with this big long list of ingredients and you have it all worked out. Morning, noon, and night. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay? And so what will happen is you'll go to the store, get all those ingredients, and you wake up on Monday morning and the schedule says, make oatmeal with bananas. So you make it, everyone eats it. Then lunch comes and you look on the schedule, turkey sandwiches. Oh, how wonderful. I have turkey sandwiches, potato chips and apples ready to go. So you eat each thing on the menu scheduled. Now what happens on Tuesday when you have grilled cheese and tomato soup planned for lunch, but your best friend invites you on a picnic and you get to go on that picnic and not make any food? Now a schedule would say this, I can't really go because I'll get behind. If we don't eat this food at this lunch, that food won't ever get eaten. It has to be eaten at this time. And so you tell your friend, I'm going to talk to the kids, and you say this to the kids. Susie wants us to go on a picnic and she's made lunch for us, but I've got all this food that we still have to eat. Do you promise to eat that meal at dinner time in addition to spaghetti? And your kids who want to go on the picnic say, oh, yeah, for sure. I'll be happy to eat grilled cheese and soup plus spaghetti at dinner. Yeah, let's go. So you go with your friend Susie. She makes a much better meal than you make. Your kids are stuffed by the end of this play date. You come home and it's time for dinner, and what do? You make grilled cheese and tomato soup because, hey, that was on the schedule and you can't miss it. And then you make spaghetti and you put it all at the table. And now your kids are sitting there staring at too much food and you shame them into eating it because they promised. They said they'd get it eaten. Why are they resisting? They promised. So the next morning, so they can't finish it, of course, because who could eat all that? So the very next morning, you've got scrambled eggs on the schedule. But there's leftover grilled cheese and leftover spaghetti, and now they have to eat those in addition to scrambled eggs. And of course, you see where this is going. By the time you get a few days into it, what happens? You hate your life. Well, isn't this how most of us treat a homeschool schedule? We get in this pattern where a good idea comes along and we have something fun to do and we're worried we're going to get behind. So we make the kids promise, oh yes, I'll double up on math and I'll double up on, groovy grammar or whatever you're doing. And the next thing you know, your kids hate their lives and you feel behind and the schedule has condemned you as a terrible home educator. Okay? So that's the tyranny of schedule. Now, I know that when you're learning and you're in a process of discovering how to add, subtract, learn to read, that you have to have some incremental steps to get there, unlike eating. What we do when we eat on a routine is we say this: we need breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 times a day. We need some snacks. If we miss a meal, it's no big deal. We'll just skip that meal, and when we come home, we will return to the routine of those 3 meals a day based on whatever supplies are available. Now, we're not eating in order to expand a skill set. So I understand that in home education, there needs to be some progress made. You can't abandon your math book for months at a time. But here is the surprising thing about homeschool, about education in general. Your kids do make progress with incremental steps with breaks. All curricula that is written for a year long has padding. It has more repetition and more practice than any school teacher uses. Do you remember in school how you never finished the books? Do you remember that? Well, that's true for you. You don't have to finish the book. You have to give enough practice that progress occurs. And what I want you to know is that if you follow inspiration once in a while, the friend who invites you on a play date, the day that the art museum has free passes, the idea of just spending all morning doing kitchen chemistry science experiments and ditching all the books, the next day, your routine will be there for you. You can go back to the routine, the sequence of things that you do on a regular basis. And you don't have to quantify it by, I needed to be at page 150 by Thursday. That's not how it works. Instead, you simply pick up where you left off. And here's what's really cool. Inspiration is not a lengthy visitor, and she's not nearly as frequent as you wish she were. So when inspiration comes, I want you to grab hold and chase where she goes. Because when she's not there, you'll have this very stabilizing routine to return to. And that will be the majority of your homeschool experience, the routine. Now, before I start in on my 5 steps, 5 tips, 5 pieces for a sane homeschool routine, I want to remind you of one thing. You will be batted about by all different kinds of homeschool philosophies over the course of your career. And all of them will contribute to your understanding of what quality education and learning is. So there may actually be a season where following a schedule is liberating and satisfying and leads you to a good place. I do not want you to hear me saying that I hate schedule and anyone who follows one is not doing it right, because sometimes it's perfect for you. What I've discovered hanging out with homeschoolers, however, is that schedule typically feels like, this judgmental, critical aunt that has hair growing out of her mole, right? Like this person who looks down on you for not doing it right, okay? And I'm here to liberate you from that feeling. All right, so let's talk about routine. I wanted to read from a book about how the brain takes in information, because I think that the routine helps that happen. And sometimes it's just nice to hear what someone else says that isn't my voice all the time. So there are 2 parts, 2 dimensions of meaning generation in learning. And the first one is what we call the aha sensation. And that's the one I want to focus on. When we're trying to facilitate learning, I would hope, I think this is true of you, it's certainly been true of me, I would hope that you are looking for insight, for epiphany, for your kids to go, oh, I get it. Do you know that feeling? Do you all know what I'm talking about? We're not just looking to check off the box and say it happened, or that they finished all 10 problems. We're hoping they're like, oh my gosh, that's how fractions work. Oh my gosh, now I know how to pronounce IGHT. oh my gosh, I had no idea that XYZ happened in the Civil War. Do you know what I'm talking about? The aha moment, exactly. And I want to tell you that the morning routine creates a context where that can happen. It's not just about efficiency. It's not just about getting things done. I want to submit to you the possibility that this style of education is going to yield the results you long for, the ones that you are right now wishing were happening, and may even be, but you aren't noticing because, hello, you didn't get to page 143 by Thursday, okay? So let me read you this, and then we'll talk a little bit, and then we'll do the 5 tips. Y'all with me? All right, here we go. Insight is much more important in education than is memorization. Felt meaning begins as an unarticulated general sense of relationship and culminates in the aha experience that accompanies insight. We might experience felt meaning when a poem we are reading begins to make sense. We might also feel this way when a lesson plan falls into place, or we find a way to solve a complex administrative problem. A frequently remarked upon experience is the sense of relief and energy that often accompanies this type of insight. I'll tell you the book in a minute. Sometimes the sensation is slight. Other insights evoke emotions ranging from awe and an almost mystical sense of oneness to joy and delight. In phenomenological terms, it occurs when we perceive a gestalt or a coming together of parts in a way that fits. This is classically illustrated by those perceptual puzzles or collections of dots that suddenly turn into recognizable pictures. Okay, so are you with me? Insight, awareness, an aha moment. The name of this book, it's kind of a dry, dusty book, Making Connections. And the subtitle is Teaching and the Human Brain. It is by the Canes, and they are an amazing people. And actually, we teach from this book. It's Renee Numela Kane and Jeffrey Kane. Actually, I think they're a married couple. We've taught from this book in the Homeschool Alliance. So those of you who are my Alliance members, you will recognize the writer. So the aha sensation, isn't that what we're going for? We're not just going for structure. We're going for education, for that leap in the imagination where it all comes together. And so I discovered there were a few key things that we need in the morning that helps create space for that to happen. Does it happen every day? No. Does it happen sometimes? Yes. And when it does, oh my goodness, that's when you feel like homeschool is humming. That's when you're like, I have the best job in the world, right? You know what I'm talking about. All right, so let's do our 5 tips. Okay, so guess what? For your kids, this is the danger of being able to see myself. Before your kids can be in a disposition to learn, they need, number 1, ready? A transition from sleep. A transition from sleep. You can take a screenshot if you want, or someone can type these into the comments and be my little secretary, because I'm going to pull it away now and talk about it. A transition from sleep. There you go. Oh, thanks for sharing, everybody. And thank you for putting that in there. Yeah, if you have nursing babies, you're always in a transition from sleep. You're basically sleepwalking. I mean, that is life for a mother with a small baby. Transition from sleep. What do I mean by that? The temptation is to think, I need to prepare my kids for the real world. Let's set the alarm and have everybody out of bed by 7 or 8 in the morning, right? Have you heard that? Everybody who goes to school, they should be getting up at 9. And, they're all ready to go by 8. Why aren't my kids out of bed, right? But one of the problems that school teachers have, and let me reiterate, it is a real problem. I teach students who come in at 8:30 in the morning. They're not awake. They are the ones who are the least ready to learn. They're sort of staggering into the classroom. Their thoughts are still on whatever they were thinking about when they woke up. Their brains aren't fully awake. In fact, at the university level, they're not eating breakfast. They're racing to class without food, and there's no fuel for learning. So what we did in my family, I didn't have an official time they had to wake up. I figure once they get a job, they're going to have that for the rest of their lives, and they'll learn it then. I don't need to teach it while they're little tiny kids. So we just woke up when we woke up. And it was usually somewhere between, depending on the ages of my children, somewhere between 8 in the morning and 10 or 10:30, depending on their ages. So they would wake up and sort of migrate down the stairs. You know what I'm talking about, right? And I usually wasn't ready to start homeschool. How many of you wake up and you're like, hey, I'm ready. I'm totally set to start teaching. I never was. I didn't have a phone back then because smartphones didn't exist, but I had a computer. Not when they were really little. When they were really little, we didn't even really have the internet. So in those cases, I would get up, and you all have the internet. So you get up, and I'd make tea. I always start with tea. I usually turn on the radio, and I would listen to a talk show. So maybe you might turn on Periscope and watch a Periscope, or listen to your favorite podcast. I would wake up and make tea and start making breakfast for the kids while I was listening to something that was stimulating me, because I needed to wake up my brain. And maybe you do. Maybe you read in the morning. Maybe you hop online and you go through 3 or 4 of your favorite homeschool blogs, and now you're ready to teach. Now you're ready to engage. Yeah, people read the skim over coffee. That's right. No more guilt over letting your kids wake up without an alarm. Yeah, to me, some of you might have other reasons for getting up early. I know a family where they got up early because their dad was on like a 24-hour cycle. He's a firefighter. And so like on sometimes when he was around, they got up early. People have reasons for an alarm. But if you don't have to do that. So wake up your brain, not just your kids. I'm talking about you. How do your kids wake up? Well, I think they wake up by playing. I think it's nice to wake up and play. I think it's great to wake up and mom is sort of getting breakfast going and they're continuing with that Lego project that they were doing yesterday. Or they're listening to music in the morning. Or maybe you did one of my suggestions where you cleared the coffee table the night before and left out a new surprise. Jacks or pickup sticks or a deck of cards. Or maybe modeling clay. My kids went through a season where each one had a cookie sheet and they kept modeling clay on it. And each morning they would get up and they would work on these little houses they were building with modeling clay before we started school. They would eat breakfast and they would play a little bit while I was listening to food for my brain, something that helped me feel ready to take on the day. Right? Exercise. If you can do exercise before the day starts, good for you. I really wasn't that successful at that. My exercise usually ended up being later in the day. Yeah, so now someone's asking, well, what about 11 and 12-year-olds? Well, it's kind of the same thing. Maybe they want to hop on the computer for a half hour, or they want to read a book that's just for fun, or they grab the tablet. I don't know what it will look like for your individual families, but the idea is this: a transition from sleep. Some time to wake up the brain, to do something satisfying and enjoyable. One mom I mentioned on another scope, she was a quilter. She used to work on quilting with one of her children each morning. She had 2 boys, in fact, and they took turns. And she always did quilting with them. They actually went to public school. She quilted with them in the morning before school every day. I thought that was fabulous. Okay, we're getting to that. What happens if they don't get going? Okay, we're getting there. So the first thing, obviously, transition from sleep. The second tip, we're getting there to transition out of play. Oh my gosh, you're all such good people. You're trying so hard. You're like, wait a minute, we still have to do school. I promise we're going to do school. There are 5 tips. How many have we done so far? We've done 1. Okay, good. Here's tip number 2. Food. So if they've been on the computer and it's time to eat, where do they have to be to eat? Well, I wouldn't let them eat at my computer because that's the quickest way to spill a drink and ruin a computer. So in our house, you don't eat breakfast next to the computer. You eat it over at the table. This is a little girl in her pajamas. Hannah Anderson Stripes, thank you. That's my great artwork. Food and clothing. Now, there's a big joke that homeschoolers do all their schoolwork in their Hannah Anderson pajamas or whatever version of pajamas your kids wear. We found that it made a good transition. So if they are doing their transition from sleep in their pajamas, food and changing clothes was the natural break before we started more official kinds of activities. Does that make sense? Do you understand? So all of you who said, well, what if he won't get off? Well, food and change of clothes are what come next. Now, I didn't say this at the beginning, but I'm going to say it now. Your kids need to buy in. And the way they do that is you communicate with them. You treat them like human beings that can have a conversation about the plan for their lives. So right now, most kids think, I don't want to do homeschool. Let's just say that's the general feel. It wasn't really that feel in my house, but let's say you have a group of kids who never want to get off the computer and they hate homeschool. So the first thing you're going to say to them is, hey, I have an idea about how we can reform the morning so that you get to do what you like and I still fulfill my responsibility to you and the state for your education. What if we start the day with you having about a half hour to wake up in your pajamas, play your game before breakfast? What about that? If you give that as the starting point, that is so different than you have to get all your schoolwork done before I let you anywhere near Minecraft. Do you see what I'm saying? And if they understand that you have their back, you want them to have a happy life. You're not about being adversarial about the things they love any more than you want them telling you, do you have to listen to that stupid Julie Bogart on a, Periscope again? Right? We want to support each other's passions. We want to show them that we value what they value. And one way to do that is to brainstorm. What helps you wake up? Well, how about we make sure you have some time to do that in the morning before we start homeschool, okay? So wake up, you're going to transition. Then when it's time for food, they're going to come and eat food. Then you're going to send them to their rooms to get dressed, okay? Oh, that's adorable. Well, say hi to your kids for me. And just as a little caveat, Noah was ADD as a kid, and he could not be sent to his room to get dressed. If I sent him upstairs to get dressed, make his bed, and brush his teeth, he made Legos. So what we had to do with Noah is I would send him upstairs and I'd say, go put on your shirt and pants and then come to the top of the stairs and show me. And he would come and show me. And then I'd say, okay, now go back in and make your bed and come back out and show me when you're done. And he'd come out and stand and I'd say, okay, now go in and brush your teeth, come back to the top of the stairs when you're done and show me. So don't expect that everybody can do all this. You're still the mom. You're still the person who facilitates their growth, their training. And Noah is 28, and I just want you to know, he dresses himself. He brushes his own teeth. He goes to work on time. He sets an alarm. It all works out. What they do at age 10 is not proof that they will fail as adults, I promise, okay? So, are you with me? We got 1, transition. 2, food and clothing. So what comes next? Here's what comes next. In our house, I'm glad that's reassuring. Awesome. Of course there's hope. They're kids. They're young. They're young. And they've got you. So of course they're going to depend on you. I mean, how fun is that? I wish I had someone marshalling me around sometimes. That would be so helpful. Keep me on task. Okay. So now, they've transitioned. They've had food and clothing. We start with many and varied books. Number 3. And I used my gold and copper and silver pen because books are the gold standard of home education, where the insight, the aha moment occurs, what I just read to you about. Everybody got their little screenshot? Okay, good. All right, I'm taking it off. Here we go. So, I brought with me my basket of books because we did a lot of reading aloud. I got in a rocking chair for most of our morning time routine, and I read books. I think I was influenced a lot by Charlotte Mason at the period when, oh no, we didn't do chores in the morning. Oh, pets, I don't know. We had a dog. He was sweet. He went in and out all the time. Beds, yes. When they do their clothes, have them make their beds. Sure. I don't like doing, okay, so I don't like the word chore very much because it just makes me miserable as an adult. So we kind of stayed away from that. But we, once a week on Saturday mornings, we had little jobs that everybody did. And so we did things once a week. And then also they did the cleanup after dinner with their dad. So that's what we did. I'm glad you loved that. Yeah, no, there were no chores. Not in the morning. Heck no. I wasn't up for it. I'm sure they weren't either. But we did read books, and I was very up for that. So I would sit in a rocking chair, and we would read. What I was saying is I was influenced a lot by Charlotte Mason, and she recommended reading a little bit from a variety of books each day. So I loved that. One of the things we did, and I couldn't find the book, it's hiding somewhere in my house, is we read an Aesop's Fable every day. I think we did that for a year or two. It's a 2-minute read. But we read them every morning. And we would even sometimes wind up talking about whether or not the moral of the story made any sense. Remember what I said about epiphanies and ahas? Well, the feeling was cozy. We're in our living room. I'm reading an Aesop's Fable every day. They start to associate fables with playing with blocks and knitting and Legos and listening to Mother read. And slowly, the pattern of the fable becomes almost like memorizing music. You know how you listen to a song long enough and you know all of the words? That's what was happening. They were getting to know the pattern of fable. So would you read 2 or 3 at once or over the course of the day? I did all my reading back to back, and I did it in about an hour. It usually lasted about an hour. I seem to always last about an hour for everything. You've noticed that, right? You've been on my scopes. Oh my goodness. We're only on number 3. Okay, so we would read a fable. At the time when my kids were younger, we sometimes read from the Bible because that was something we did back then. But I always want to be cautious about saying that because you don't have to do that, and we did not do that every year of our homeschool. And some of you have other religious texts that you might read. And like I said, there was a point at which where we stopped doing that. So we've done both. How about younger ones who consistently interrupt read-alouds? So find out what's going on. I had toddlers who could not be breastfed, babies and toddlers who could not be breastfed while I was reading aloud. Sometimes I put younger kids in my bed, in my bedroom, to watch a video if I felt like they didn't like the book and it was disruptive for my older children who deserved my attention. So you have to work out some of these parenting issues, and those will vary year to year, child to child. For interrupting children, you can teach them things, like the classic one is tell them to put their hand on you rather than using their words, and when you come to a natural pausing place, you will first they put their hand on you. Then you put your hand over theirs to acknowledge that you know they are reaching out to you. And then they wait. And when you come to a pause, you stop what you're doing and you say, now I want to know what you have to say. So you teach them a little bit of patience. And you give them a way to let you know that they have something they need to tell you. There's no specific age a toddler should be able to do anything. Some toddlers love listening to read-alouds, and some hate it. And then they will outgrow it. So it's going to vary, family to family, child to child, and I'm not into like forcing a toddler. Has anyone ever successfully forced a toddler? I certainly haven't. Yeah, so that's sort of the logistics side, but let's look at the book side first. So Aesop's Fable, a spiritual book if that's what your family's about, but not if it isn't. We would read on sort of a weekly basis something related to art. So maybe some of you have seen Linnea in Monet's Garden, but I would check out books like this. And once a week, we would read about an artist or some kind of art book. For older elementary, do you suggest independent reading? Okay, this is all parent reading aloud time. Independent reading doesn't happen during this part of morning time. In fact, to encourage independent reading in my family, we used to do it in the afternoon. I didn't do this every year for 17 years. but we would light a candle and set an alarm, and everyone would find a cozy place to be in the house and read for 15 minutes to themselves. That was beyond the capacity of my 8-year-old daughter, who was not a reader yet, and so the being silent thing didn't work, so she and I would play a game while the other kids read. So that's kind of how we handled that. I'm having trouble with a 12-year-old getting mad about a 6-year-old asking questions during a read aloud. So talk to everyone in the family. And maybe you need to give them an incentive. So a 6-year-old's much older than like a toddler. So a 6-year-old, what you could do is you could actually reward that 6-year-old for periods of quiet. So you can say to the 6-year-old, I'm going to read this many pages, and then you might show him 1, 2, 3. And I want you to sit next to me and watch them turn. And when we get to the end of that page, then I want you to tell me what I read. Like, find ways to involve them and show them how long it's going to take and let them be a part of that experience. One of the issues for young kids is time means nothing. And when you just keep telling them to sit still, it's like asking them to be quiet for eternity. So you want to involve them in the quantity of time and help them imagine it, live into it, understand it. Does that make sense? Do you understand? And all of this is process. This is why schedule doesn't work. For heaven's sakes, we can hardly do routine, right? Yes, and absolutely, questions are important, and it's okay for a question to derail the reading, but not every day, not every chapter, not every moment, because that can also be disruptive. All right, so we said fables. We said possibly spiritual. Once a week, I like to do something related to art. I like to read nonfiction, something from nonfiction. I hope someone's writing these down. I didn't make cards for each one. This book is called A Dream of Freedom, and it's all about the civil rights movement. 1960s, the sit-in. So I would read something from nonfiction. This is, for high school kids, whole other gig. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is probably, I'm thinking for kids, I mean, your high schoolers are certainly welcome to listen, but I'm thinking of, typical baby all the way up through junior high into early high school, okay? Like till 13 or 14. High school students tend to be more independent and working on things more independently, okay? So, nonfiction. And I, just happen to have this book, but they'll come from the library. They'll be about natural disasters and birds and, how to make a film and pick something interesting. Geography, world religions. It doesn't have to be always related to history or science. Some nonfiction. Here's why. You're shaping the ear for writing. You're shaping the ear for writing. Most of the writing they do is going to be academic while they are in your house. And yes, I would read a chapter, or I might read 2 paragraphs. It really depends. It doesn't have to be a whole volume all at once. Little doses. You are shaping the ear for writing. You want them to hear nonfiction read aloud, not just fiction. Fiction is great, and they're going to write stories, and they're going to love fan fiction, but we want them to also feel comfortable with the syntax of nonfiction. All of my Periscopes are on catch. Okay, so I saw someone taking notes for me. Thank you so much. I happen to really enjoy Susan Wise Bauer's Story of the World, so we used these books at different periods. I'm not sure we read all of them all the way through, but we really liked them. So I would read something from here as well, and they worked really well for us. Shout out to SWB. She did such a good job. So fables, spiritual maybe, art, nonfiction, story of the world. Thank you so much for doing that. Then we would certainly read, if it was Tuesday, we would do poetry tea time, and we would save poetry for the tea time. But occasionally, I would read a poem in our read aloud time if there was something that related to history or something that I thought would be fun to memorize. So I might include a poem. But most of our poetry reading was poetry tea time. Okay? This is all in one morning. Can you believe it? All in one morning. Lasts me about an hour. And then finally, the queen of the read aloud time is the read aloud fiction book. Whether it's your historical fiction or it's your, oh, you can get that poetry book. It is now on Amazon, like used, but I don't know, it might be gone. But anyway, yeah, I did this every morning. I did. And then we would read our read aloud book. Now this is Wonder, one of my favorite children's books of all time. It doesn't even matter. You are totally free to read whatever read aloud book. How many pages? Someone is going to want to know. Yeah, read the arrow selection, exactly. Yeah. Now, Rebecca is saying I can barely get through a few pages of one chapter. It's okay if this isn't your family's thing. This was our thing. And here's what I want to tell you about reading aloud. I didn't just barrel through. And I didn't read too much at once. We would read, and then we would admire someone's block tower. And then I might nurse the baby. And then I would read a little bit more. And then I might get the oldest child who knew how to read a paragraph or two to all of us. In other words, it was an hour devoted to play and reading happening simultaneously. And we would talk in between. If we were reading a book as meaty as A Dream of Freedom, we would talk for a few minutes. Does this make sense? Yeah, no 2 days are alike. It's play and reading. It's conversation and reading. And you know what? If all you get through is one book and it generates this amazing conversation, you're done. You're done. Did you plan your readings according to a plan? So I am notorious for not using scheduled readings. And I think I shared this before, but I'm going to share it again because I don't know who's new on here. So back when I was a homeschooler, Sunlight was the place where all the big homeschooling boards were, much more than today, which is more like the well-trained mind. And every day, a Sunlight parent would explain to other parents how to modify the schedule, or how not to use the schedule, or how to ignore the schedule, or how not to feel bad about yourself and the schedule. I got sick of it. No two people can follow the same schedule. This is why I don't schedule BraveWriter materials, because I don't want to add guilt and layers of frustration and disappointment to your life. You get to go at the pace that works for you in your season of life and your children. And you can read just one book, one chapter a day, or you can do a mixture of books, a little bit a day, or you can just not do it because right now you can't do it. But I'm trying to cast a vision for the value of reading from a variety, many varied books. And if it works for you to just do one kind of book per day and rotate, go for it. Do you think reading first thing in the morning helps with other subjects? You are anticipating me. You are ahead of me. Yes, and here's why. The reason I like to start with reading aloud is that we have an awakened brain from them waking up. They've eaten food, and now I am giving them, as Charlotte Mason would say, a feast of ideas to contemplate. They get to take a little mini brain vacation. They get to think about good thoughts, an exciting story, a part of history they know nothing about. And those thoughts are as nourishing as an oatmeal breakfast. It's like the food of the mind life. So that when you go from that to the next thing, which I'm going to talk about next, they actually have engaged brains. Their brains are awake. They are now engaged. They are thinking about what it means to be in relation to information. Did you do all this 7 days per week? Oh, no, never 7. Oh, no. Monday to Friday, if that. And actually, when we lived in Ohio, we were in a co-op on Mondays. So we did it 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, okay? Tuesday through Friday, not every day. And if I had a sick child, or we all overslept because we stayed up late, or we just didn't feel like it, we didn't do it. Yeah, we are connecting with them before they get at the table, and they're going to do number 4. Are you ready? Here comes number 4. We've done 1, 2, and 3. Here's tip 4. Table time. Table time. So the randomness of the subjects in my read aloud time is all okay. Yes. Fridays we do other stuff. Great. Transition, food, clothes, many varied books, table time. Thank you, my note taker. Thank you, Michelle. All right, you got your pictures of this? Someone's asking about my husband. We'll talk about that another time. Our issue is we could read all day. If you did, your kids would have a fabulous education. You can't even really go wrong. There are worse things parents are doing to their children every day than reading all day long to their wonderful kids. Okay? Table time. So what was table time in my family? Are you ready? Okay. This is going long. I was going to try and end at 8, which for me is 10 minutes from now. Are you guys okay with me continuing? I've got 4 and 5, and then we'll be close to done. I wanted to leave time for questions. But, and you can always watch this on Catch. But everybody's still hanging in there with me? Okay. All right, good. I just want to be sensitive. I know you have families, and I am worried I'm dominating your day. Okay. Woo! I'm glad this is helpful. I was afraid I might be repeating everything everyone else says about table time. I have no, morning routine. Okay. All right, cool. Lightsaber fighting? I want to be where you are. Stirring pasta. Yeah, it's gonna, yeah. Good. Hubby's doing bedtime. Awesome. Okay, good. We're gonna keep going then. Table time. So in my house, table time is when we did anything that required a pencil. So if we were going to do copywork or dictation, math pages, the times when my kids were using books like Explode the Code or Worldly Wise, yes, we did use those. If they were doing a grammar program or Latin, yes, I had a child who did Latin. That's when it happened. And I didn't expect them to put in an hour a day on each subject. But what we did do, and the way it worked in my family, is I tried to keep us all doing the same subject around the same time. Yes, drawing, absolutely. We did actually go through a big period of drawing. We love drawing. We would do copywork all at the same time, for example. So we would light a candle. That for some reason, candles and copywork really worked well for us. It elevated the experience. It was sort of like, oh, I mean, I know Suzanne Barrett. I don't know if she's on there, on right now. She's one of our BraveWriter instructors, but she's all about really elegant pens, like calligraphy pens and different writing utensils. We never went that far, but we did add a candle. It just sort of changed the atmosphere around copywork. And I used those cookbook holders. Yeah, I'm explaining it right now. We use those clear plastic cookbook holders, and I would put the book inside open to the page, and then we would have a sheet of paper for the person to do the writing on their own sheet of paper. Colored pens have changed your enthusiasm. You can also download and print gorgeous sheets for copywork with, designs that can be colored in if your kids are into that. Johanna made her own book that she hand sewed. That's really fun. You can certainly do that for copywork. It's also really wonderful to use gel pens and black paper for a change of pace. So think through ways to enhance. Yeah, we put most of our copywork inside the clear page protectors, and then we would stick them in a notebook. But like I said, some of my kids preferred composition books. They would decorate the outsides and write inside of those, or the hand-sewn book that Johanna used. There are so many ways that you can do it. Yeah, there you go. Oh, the candles create a need for fire safety talks. Yes, I have mentioned before, your kids are going to want to go like this through the lights, through the flame. And so if that is like unnerving and rattling and ruins you, just don't do it. You have my permission not to go there. So the copywork passages come from books that they're reading. Now, BraveWriter has a product that selects passages and gives you instructions for how to maximize the grammar and punctuation and literary device value of those passages. So you could order the arrow or the boomerang and use our product, but you can also use my very sophisticated copywork method. You want to hear it? How to find passages? This is a secret. Don't tell anyone. I'm only sharing it with my Periscope audience. Okay, ready? This is how you find the best passage for copywork in a book. Ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, you take the book, and then you do this. You open it up to any random page, and then you take your finger and you close your eyes and you go like this. Woo! And then you're like, okay, that one will work. Okay? That's the secret. That's the secret. Any passage will work. If it's written in English and it's been cleared by an editor, it'll have good enough punctuation and great enough language for you to use it. Yeah, shh, don't tell. Don't share. Don't tell anyone. Okay? That's how you find them. Now, your kids are going to read along, and they are going to find a passage that they love. And you want them to feel free to pick passages they love. You know why? They are creating commonplace books when they do that. They are gathering their favorite quotes that speak to them, and they get to record them and keep them forever. Do I just let it go outside of our one lesson? We'll talk about that in a minute, about writing. But for now, let's stick with the morning routine, because I can't cover everything. This is enough. I'm glad you had a good belly laugh. Yeah, you know what's really funny? I didn't even want to create the arrow, because I was like, how hard is it to pick passages? But I was prevailed upon by mothers, even after showing them the secret trick. And so here's what I like to suggest. If you want it done for you, we do it for you. And we give you details and information that might enrich the discussion of the passage. Well, go for it. Make it easy on yourself. And you may discover, even in their use, that you start to feel brave enough to do it with passages your kids pick. Do you have them copy a certain amount of time, or when they're finished with the passage? So I explain all that in the guidelines to the arrow, and I don't want to spend a long time on copy work today. Maybe we can do a scope about copy work. But the bottom line is this. You want your kids to finish copying, wanting to do more. Charlotte Mason always says that you shouldn't tire out a child. My ex-husband always says, leave while you're having fun. Those are two very good pieces of advice, okay? And I know now some of you are distracted by the ex-husband comment. We are on excellent terms. I can't share about the divorce, but he was a very, very supportive homeschooling husband and a fabulous educator in his own right. Okay, got that? That's how we do it. So our table time usually consisted of some copy work. It consisted of some workbook work if we had it, and then it usually involved math. Math was what we did in the morning before lunch. Now sometimes we did a snack between all that handwriting-ish stuff, and then we did math, okay? And the math materials varied child to child. Some required me to participate with them, some didn't. So if you, let's see, did you do grammar, spelling, conversations before, during, or after the copy work, or left it alone? So I did it right before, not during, and usually not after. And not for every passage, but for many passages. And sometimes, you know, we have 4 different kinds of ways of engaging a passage in BraveWriter. So we would do copy work, we would do a little bit of what I call French style dictation, which is another style, regular dictation, and then something we called reverse dictation. But I don't have time to do that today. So we'll talk about it another time. I promise. Okay? But what I'm trying to say is this. We did our sort of group of handwriting things together. Yes, so all the kids are working at the same time at the table, and I am moving from person to person and occasionally messing around with a toddler over in the living room, right next to the kitchen table, okay? Sometimes different passages for different kids. Sometimes they each had their own passage dependent on the child. And we did tend to do a lot of copy work, even more than dictation. Our homeschool day usually started between 9 and 10, usually. Sometimes earlier if everyone was up, but usually between 9 and 10. And we would usually have a little bit of a snack before math, because I discovered that my kids' brains needed food. I'm known in my family for saying, do you need some protein? Can I get you some protein? Do you want me to make you some protein? I have this belief that protein is directly related to brain power. I don't know if it's true, but I was all about it. So, you know, turkey snacks or cheese and crackers or peanut butter or something like that. We also really like taking energy breaks, like Let them go run outside and jump on the trampoline, chase the dog in the backyard, kick a soccer ball. Like we would do that between all this handwriting at the table and then the math problem. Okay, so there's usually a break in there. And for those of you who've heard my scopes before, I did a thing I called blast off with my young kids, my very, very young ones, like preschool and through first grade, where they would stand on a chair and they do some reciting, like counting backwards, 10, 9, 8, 6, 7, all the way down to 1. And then they would yell blast off and jump off the chair and land in a bunch of pillows, okay? And we would do that for all their recitations. So sometimes I would send the older kids outside to run around and I'd do blast off with the younger kids, and then we'd all come back and we'd do math, okay? And then once we did our math, it was usually lunchtime. And by then, the morning was over. But I've only given you 4 things. And I promised you 5. So here's the 5th tip. The day isn't over at lunch. That's just your morning. And after lunch, this is what we would do. Group games, or something with other subjects, or we'd work on a project. And I tried to do these as a group. So that would be the time. It's like group games or subjects or projects. All group. You could just say number 5 is group stuff. Because there was always right after lunch, we were all still together. So if I wanted us to do a science experiment or play Scrabble or play Quiddler, maybe we wanted to do a project related to Story of the World. And so now we would do it. It was after lunch. Nobody wanted to do bookwork or handwriting practice after lunch, but they were really willing to all hang out together to do a game or to do a project or to look at a subject area together. You know, I remember we did Beowulf and Chaucer and that kind of thing after lunch. But and by then you can put toddlers to bed and babies to bed and use that nap time for maybe that more partnering work that you need to do with older kids. Oh, we need a scope on high energy boys. I can't do that at the end of this scope, but I appreciate and totally get the question. Yeah, geography after lunch, science, perfect. So you know what? If you sleep till 10, then you're just going to modify all this, right? You're just going to modify it. You won't have lunch until 2, and you'll do your after lunchtime at night. I mean, I don't want to dictate a schedule. These are routines, and here's the way I think about it. You need time to wake up the brain through your own pleasurable activities, food, and clothing. You need time to stimulate the mind with quality words and thoughts and ideas and stories. You need time to engage the brain and the hand on rote tasks that are incremental, progress-oriented subjects. You need breaks for food and relaxation and using your body, and then you need time for things to do as a group, and that focus on subjects that don't really slot themselves into the morning. And that is homeschool. If you do all that and then occasionally throw everything out the window because there's so much fun to be had today doing one thing, then you got it. And on Tuesdays, of course, poetry tea time is going to take over your read aloud time and maybe even breakfast or the morning snack. So that'll work too. And if you're going on a day where you're nature hiking, then maybe you just don't do copy work that day. Maybe you throw out all the workbooks. How about that? How about that? How does that sound? Does that sound like something that's helpful and that you guys can consider doing? I will tell you this. When we lived this lifestyle, it was our best years of homeschooling. It was our best years of homeschooling. Now, I had some older kids, boys in particular, with ADD type issues, and I did get sidetracked at one point, and I tried really hard to pull in unschooling because I was captivated by the vision of this, the aha moment. I wanted that desperately for all my kids. And what ended up happening is I sort of threw out the baby with the bathwater. I took away routines that were working for us in favor of a kind of legalism around nothing curricular, and we lost our mojo. And I had to pull it back together. Oh, I totally needed breaks, and I took them. And there were days when I didn't do homeschool at all, and I was in a panic over some horrible conversation online, and I wasted the morning arguing with other women. I mean, haven't we all done that? Here's the book that someone asked about. Yeah. And you know what? I have one more thing to read to you from that book, and then we're done. Okay. Let me see if I can find what I want to talk about. All right, ready? Okay, here we go. Every system participates in the coming together of sensed meaning. So when we talked before about the aha moment, there is no one delivery system that creates it. It's the variety of engagements with material and information. This could totally work with high schoolers. With material and information through a variety of modalities: closeness, auditory, play, handwriting, kinesthetic, group, independent. Do you hear me? Do you feel me? It's all of it together. It's not, oh, here's the right thing. My kid is kinesthetic. Everything they do has to be kinesthetic. No, because sometimes information that is delivered through the portal that is not your strong suit is perceived and understood differently and creates a nuance you would have missed otherwise. That's why we want a rich and varied diet. It's why we want a rich and varied set of books to read. So let me keep reading here. It requires the concurrent participation of senses, emotions, motor systems, respiration, and thought. Emotions are extremely important because emotions and cognition cannot be separated, and the conjunction of the two is at the heart of learning. I am reading that again. That is a knowledge bomb. Here we go. Ready? Emotions are extremely important because emotions and cognition cannot be separated, and the conjunction of the two is at the heart of learning. A routine, connection, time to pursue your own interests, good food, eye contact, conversation, exercise, group work, independent work, and a routine, not a schedule that paralyzes and imprisons you, can get it done. There you go. Thank you, Michelle, for typing that in. All right, we have only gone over by 7 minutes. I am happy for any of you who need to go to leave. Feel free to hop off. Feel free to go do what you need to do with your family. For those of you who are diehards or are desperate, stay on. I will take questions for 10 minutes. All right? I'm so glad this is helpful. You know, I know everyone has morning routines. Yeah, this is why I say when the crying starts, yeah, when the crying begins, the learning ends. Yep. You feel bad for pulling your kids away from play. Well, that's not a bad thing. Now you'll know. We all do stuff that we don't like. Okay, so someone said, what about high schoolers? So in my family, when we had some high schoolers, now most of my kids ended up going to public high school, so I need to tell you that up front. You know, I want you to know that. But when we had some high schoolers who were at home, because not all of them went full time and they didn't all go starting in 9th grade, we followed a similar pattern, but there was more independent work. So we were more flexible. I didn't sit in the rocking chair and I didn't read to all 5 kids. I did that with the younger ones, and the older ones worked more at their own pace. Noah was basically unschooled, so he did what he wanted. That's basically the truth. And occasionally we would have something that we really enjoyed doing together, and we would do it as a family. Yeah. I started reading when my kids play. I noticed they would act out what was being read. Of course, that's so wonderful. I mean, that's what you will see happening. And your kids will start rewriting the endings of books that you've read to them. I have no chore charts. And I have no food routines. Posted on the wall. Yes. Nope. Here's what's funny. I mean, those of you who've been watching my, 75 plus hours of scopes, maybe you're catching on to my personality. I'm sort of a little bit rebellious about overly scheduled things because they just make me feel bad about myself. I just feel like I'm not measuring up. But when I caught on to this idea of routine, when I realized that that's how we ate and that that's how I behave in my usual life, and it gave me comfort, I was good with that. In fact, a Catholic friend of mine talked about how liturgy is like that for her. She knows what's coming. She can go and just sort of like float into it because she knows the order of the service and she doesn't have to gin it up from scratch every day. That's what I think of. So for those of you who are religious, maybe you know what I'm talking about. For the rest of us, the way that I think about it is my daily habits, the daily ways that I create a pattern of being. And we're trying to do that with our homeschool. Someone says, is it okay to stop something your children dislike? Always. Did you just hear how important emotions are to learning? Did you catch that? Think about the subjects you hated growing up. How much did you learn? How attached are you to those today? You can always check back with your child self, the person that lives inside. You know, some of you had parents who forced you to do things, and you have opinions about that. Now, there are a variety of opinions. Sometimes it's right and just to say to a child, you can quit piano. And then other times it's worth saying, I know you really want to quit. Can we wait a month and make sure you still feel that way in a month? Or, as I did with Jacob and saxophone, I said, I know you want to quit because you're bored and you don't play with a band, but next year, the high school local is going to allow you to be on the marching band, and I think you're going to like it. Can you hang in for one more year? And he did, and he loved it, and he thanked me later for not just following his whim. Yes, like Noah revisiting college, exactly. My oldest son is on his 3rd time into college. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad it's a relief. I mean, really, what I'm sharing with you is probably pretty similar to what most homeschoolers already do naturally. We just need to remember that we're not doing it wrong. We're doing it right. And actually, the properties of home, they match this. Don't try and import school to home. That's what doesn't work. Oh, I love it. You've been relaxing and backing off of academics during this month of Advent, and you're having the best time. Well, what does that tell you? Did your kids ever resist this routine? And if so, how did you course correct? Good question, Rebecca. Yeah, so here's what my kids resist. They resist being told what they have to do in what order. So sometimes we did math first. Sometimes they were sick of a certain book. Sometimes we didn't read as many books like that. Here's the book, Making Connections. It's a very academic-y, scholarly work. We've used chapters out of this in the Homeschool Alliance, and we discussed them. This month, we're using another book called Developing Minds. I want to share a little tip for those of you who are diehard self-educators, okay? You don't need to only read homeschool books. You don't. Pretend you're in grad school and go get books about natural learning and brain function. You will learn so much. Go read blogs written by teachers who work in a classroom and find out what they know about catalyzing the aha moment in a kid. Because here's what's really funny. Some of the stuff that they do in school will be easier to do at home, and you'll achieve it. And they're trying to recreate the home feel at school. Oh, Noah wasn't the only unschooled child. The whole family was. It was a disaster. Not a complete disaster. Some really great stuff came out. During Read Aloud, what about kids who are not really listening? Is this building a bad habit? Well, first of all, you don't know if they're not listening. A lot of times they look like they're not listening. But being in the environment of reading every day, you'll be shocked at how much they retain, how much is going in, what they're hearing. It may not match your ideas of retention, like the plot perfect, but you'll be shocked. Things are going in and they're hearing it. And even if they're not fully engaged, it's okay. It's okay. So let me just explain the unschooling question really quick. So Noah was struggling with, okay. All right, I've got an unschooling question and a 4-year-old. I think I mentioned before we use video, Sesame Street. Sometimes we did that. Sometimes while the older kids were at the table, I played cards or a game or dressed up dolls with the 4-year-old. I kept the kids near, but I didn't require them to do stuff. Sensory bins, puzzles, exactly. all of that stuff. Yeah, I'm not an enemy of television. I'm not saying I wanted to park a 4-year-old in front of the TV for 4 hours a day, but watching a half hour or an hour is not a big deal. Yeah, see you, Danny. This is plenty. I mean, we're really at the end. So I'm going to tell you the unschooling story and then we'll be done. So Noah was really bristling under me planning his life, okay? And I spent time researching unschooling and hanging out on those boards. And I mean the vision they cast. It is magical. It's like learning happens. And I learned so many valuable principles that I pass on to you all the time about empathy and engagement and seeing the world through a child's eyes and what it feels like to be a child with parents who are telling them what to do all the time and how to really facilitate the aha moment. I got endlessly good things from Unschool. But what happened in my family that wasn't healthy is that a couple of my kids, Jacob and Johanna, loved our school routine. And they loved knowing what was expected. And they measured their progress by accumulation of work that they valued. I mean, Johanna asked me to pay for a tutor so she could learn Latin, and we did that. And she didn't have any reason to learn Latin. She just got curious, and she stayed with it for 2 years. So this is a kid who really liked academic process, loved a stack of books, wanted to read textbooks. Like, that was her thing. Jacob wanted to compete with other kids. He liked having, boxes to check off. That was important to him. It wasn't to Noah. It was killing Noah. So we sort of announced this Unschool experiment at breakfast one morning. We took everyone out for pancakes, and my husband and I cast this big vision, and 2 of the boys cheered. 1 child wasn't old enough to care, and then the other 2 worried, and it created stress for them. So there was some really great benefits that resulted, but there was also some learning for me. And I'm going to save that for another scope another time. But that answers the basic question. So are we good? My goodness, there's still 81 of you here. That's incredible. Yeah, and there's no reason to drop the routine for kids who really find it enlivening. Just be aware that inspiration sometimes likes to party crash. And when she arrives, entertain her, because you will get so much good stuff when that happens. All right, everybody, we're going to close. Ready? So here's my little, if you want to take a little screen cap for the final, so you have that. Yeah, you outlasted the fire. That's exactly right. It's kind of bleak back there. Okay, you ready? We are going to close. Here's my closing. Live honestly. Write bravely. I'm Julie Bogart from BraveWriter and the Homeschool Alliance. It's been great having you with me tonight. I can't wait to hear about your routines. I forgot to read the paydays. Oh my goodness. Okay, hashtag payday BraveWriter, payday BW. Put all the great things that are happening on Twitter, and I'm going to do a scope tomorrow, and I will read them because I want to share how great things are going in your families. All right. Love you all. Have a great night. Bye, everybody.